let's tie this to something that we recently have all been talking about, and that's the infamous Netflix movie, The Social Dilemma, which
Hmm.
basically posits that some of the largest tech companies, probably all of them, have used our data not just to nudge us in a particular direction, which we all kind of expect from advertising, but to actively create these passionate addictions. And to many of us, this really feels like a big breach of trust, and it should. But it's further concerning because, at least from our point of view, we think about how companies are using customer data. And so, if tech giants were doing this years ago, we know that everyday companies that we interact with could be just a few steps behind. So, the question I have for you is, has the horse left the barn? Is it too late for us to reclaim anything in our data? It's all spread out there so aggressively. And if so, how can we trust companies with that data?
Well, I guess I would answer that. Let's see. No, no, and it depends. So yeah, the horse has not yet left the barn, although it's definitely gearing up to bust through the the open doorway there into the fields. The web is still an adolescent. We have to remember that it's quite young. It's only been around, as I said, commercially since roughly the mid '90s. So our experience of it is still fairly new and fresh. And I think one of the things the platform companies have taken advantage of is utilizing the web in a way that we basically get a bunch of free stuff in exchange for the data that they extract from us. And
And
that
I
has
want to
become,
clarify just briefly, like Web
yes,
1.0 was what we originally had when you had individual websites, but Web 2.0 is more platforms and networks and integrations. Is that
yeah,
correct?
exactly right. Yeah, and that's the way a number of analysts think about it. The web, the notion of the client server relationship is the basis of the web. That we are in fact on the client side, and the servers out in what has eventually become the cloud. It's where all the activity happens. That's where the websites are, and so our web browsers take us to the websites, and that's where the interactions occur. And in the Web 2.0 configuration, Google was really the first one to figure this out when they matched up ads and search back in 2000, roughly 20 years ago. But Facebook and many others followed suit. And the idea was they could create a platform, and this is an economic term. It's not a technology term. It goes back to the ancient Greeks again. It's the agora, right? It's the place you go to where buying and selling and bartering and trading happens. And in this
Mhm.
case, the platform companies figured out that if they were able to sort of extract data from users, that data would be very valuable to advertisers and marketers and others in terms of the insights that they give. So valuable, in fact, that the platform companies can afford to give us all these amazing services and applications essentially for free, right? For free, of course, in scare quotation
For
marks.
free.
Yes, yes. The freedom there is the freedom to have them know, what you ate for dinner last night, and what your size of your jeans are, and a whole bunch of other things, right? So I think many people are okay with that. I mean, until recently, I think, and the social dilemma, I think provides a really great community service here. We didn't understand the depths of this. There was this concept that, well, you sort of take my data and then you get some insights from it, and I get my free stuff, and that's all good. And the social dilemma demonstrates, I think, quite effectively why it goes beyond that. It's not just about understanding us and who we are, it's about influencing us. And the word that comes up again and again in the documentary, and I think, again, quite with good reason, is manipulation. And in
Mhm.
fact, the writings I've been doing in the past couple of years, the analysis I've been doing, I employ a term I call the SEAMS cycle, SEAMS. And the notion here is this feedback loop that's constantly being created multiple times during the course of a day and your interactions with the web. The S is for the surveillance, the devices that are in your environment that are studying you, watching you, waiting for something to happen. Think of the Alexa sitting in your living room, always sort of on
Always
standby,
on,
right?
always
On
listening, and
standby.
every now and then popping up with an answer that you didn't ask for.
Yeah, exactly right. And if you have a daughter named Alexa, it becomes even more awkward. And E is for extraction. So it's actually pulling the data from you from the environment. The A is for analysis. That's the computational side. That's these algorithmic operations, which again, in the documentary, they demonstrate with those three gentlemen standing there trying to figure out how they're going to extract the maximum value out of the interactions and then the data they draw from the interactions. And then the M of the SEAM cycle is manipulation. So when I originally came up with that 2 years ago, I thought manipulation sounds like quite a strong term. Some people might push back on it, but I'm now seeing it everywhere. And Shoshana Zuboff, who wrote Surveillance Capitalism, again, did a masterful job of demonstrating the depths to which it's not just taking our data and selling us things we might want. It's trying to sell us things that they're not sure we want, or they want to influence or manipulate us into wanting. And the selling is not just about goods and services. It can be about viewpoints politically. It can be about your vote. It can be a whole number of things, and that these interactions in some ways are trying to define you. And so that I think is the real concern.
It's through all this experimentation, they've found how to really effectively influence people about much more than goods and services. I think that's where all of us kind of said, "Oh my gosh," stand up and take notice.
It's one thing to watch, an advertisement on television or even in the movie theaters, or see ads in your newspaper. That's a relatively passive experience. Their ability now is to make this a two-way experience, but one that they control, right? I think that's the part. And I think Tristan Harris put it well. It's not that we're reaching the point in the singularity where the computers sort of take over from human strengths. We're actually at a point much earlier than that, where they are in fact taking advantage of our human weaknesses. They know us psychologically better than we know ourselves. And that, I think, creates some real grave risks for us, again, as a matter of being in the marketplace, but also, as the social fabric we inhabit, the political systems we try to build for ourselves. There's so many implications here in a way that I think, so on the one hand, there's time to change. The horse hasn't left the proverbial barn yet, but on the other hand, there's a lot of machinery here that's been embedded in place over the last decade or two with the platforms that we need to figure out how to unharness and allow us as human beings to have more recourse and more say.